night while I'm sat at my desk doing something I don't really like doing, and that's recording myself. I'm not much of an extrovert, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Judas. For those of my friends who know what Judas is, sorry about this, but for those of you out there who don't know what Judas is and have come across this video, I figured I'd give you the basics. So Judas is my 2003 Audi RS6, very rare car. I bought the car maybe 10 years ago without an engine, and some of the parts have been sold off, so I was really saving it from being parted out. I'm an Audi guy. I have a lot of Audis in various states of disarray and not working, as I tend to beat on them pretty hard and blow them up. So I bought this car with the intention of building a BCY V8 for it, so I would have an RS6, one of I believe 1200 in the US. And the car sat for quite some time. I was busy doing a whole bunch of other things, and then I started thinking about the car and what I was going to do, and as is usual, after some drinking, I decided that instead of putting an Audi V8 in it, I might put a LS1 in it, an LS motor. The Audi motors are great. They can make big power, but they're very expensive, very difficult to work on. Things crammed in there pretty hard. So in a drunken moment of stupidity, I bought an engine, an ECU harness combination out of I believe a 2004 Pontiac GTO. So I think a 5.7 liter aluminum block LS1. And I spent about a year figuring out how to make it work in the car with adapter plates, custom flywheels. The engine is about 6 inches longer than the Audi engine, so I pushed the motor back as far as possible. I also put an 01E 6-speed transmission in it, heavily built 01E transmission, with I won't get into the details of the transmission just yet. But because the motor was 6 inches longer, I pushed it back and down as far as I could in the chassis to give me more room up front for pulleys. There still wasn't quite enough room, so I ended up having to use an electric water pump and LS4 crank pulley, and then I used all of the Audi accessories and figured out my own mounts, so the alternator and power steering pump and everything is all Audi. So first incarnation of the car, probably about 9 years ago now, was a normally aspirated bone stock Pontiac GTO LS with a 6-speed transmission behind it, and the rest of the car is stock Audi RS6. I took the car down to New Jersey Motorsports Park to let it stretch its legs, and unfortunately blew the motor. What happened was I was using the factory RS6 fuel pump, and that's a funky fuel pump, and it went lean, basically took the motor out. The fuel pump couldn't keep up, and it took the motor out. So the car came back to New Hampshire at that point, and the motor came out, and I built a motor for it. So I used the aluminum block, created a 383 stroker, AFR heads, Mongoose 230 heads, custom custom cam, and a whole bunch of decent quality stuff. Nothing crazy, but I built it to boost, and at that point there was no room to put turbos at the front of the car, so the turbos went in the back, rear mount, dual Chinese KO4s, custom built manifold and all the rest of it. Got the car up and running pretty good. Did pretty well. It was making around 500 at the wheels at that point, so more than about the same as a fairly well tuned Audi V8 RS6 motor, but of course you can never have too much power. So I bought some precision turbos, bigger precision turbos, redid the exhaust system, and got the car up and running, drove it, tuned it, and then unfortunately, when the car was about perfect, I had a fuel hose, a crossover fuel hose between the fuel rails on the LS, which was the only hose I hadn't built myself. It came as a kit. in part of the kit with the fuel rails, and that hose split. Probably because at this point I was running a pair of 044 Motorsports fuel pumps. The hose split, had a fire in the engine bay, almost totally lost the car. I was actually in the parking lot of a grocery store in New Hampshire. I had a fire extinguisher with me, so I jumped out, emptied the fire extinguisher through the grill, or not emptied it. I used about half the fire extinguisher through the grill, and then I opened the hood and I used the rest of the fire extinguisher, and the fire went out. Unfortunately, the fire didn't actually go out. It came back again, at which point, you know, everyone had scattered, and there was quite a commotion in the parking lot, and I thought, well, I'm done, the car's going to burn down. But then the store manager came out, and I yelled at him, it's like, you know, I need a fire extinguisher. So he ran back in, ran back out, big fire extinguisher, used it, put the fire out. At which point the fire department turned up, and that was that. So I got the car towed home. Pretty extensive damage, you know, melted the front end pretty good. So the car got parked for a little while I fought with insurance companies. Sometime later, pulled the motor, cleaned up the engine bay, repaired and replaced all the fire damage, got the car running again, took it to a friend, Mark Swanson at EFI Express, and we had it on the dyno. We were just getting into tuning with the precision turbos, and we were at 15 psi, just under 15 psi boost, and we made right around 800 all-wheel horsepower and 800 all-wheel foot-pounds of torque on a hub dyno. Just a little under those numbers, but you know, for all intents and purposes, 800. But we were getting a lot of blowback out of the crank levers. So we cut the dyno session short. I took the car home. We pulled the motor out. Took the motor to my engine builder's house, and we tore it down together so we could see what was wrong. And there wasn't anything dramatically wrong other than the crank main bearings were worn heavily. So lots of reflection and thinking and between myself and my engine builder. And we believed that the block was flexing. We saw signs that the two outer mains were more worn than the center main. So that was really the end of that motor. And around, this was about 5.5, 6 years ago. So around that time, my then girlfriend Stacy and I bought our giant building in Detroit, and we moved from New Hampshire over the course of the next 2 years. Moved from New Hampshire to Detroit, and moved my entire shop and 7 or 8 cars and got all sorts of stuff. So Judas has been sat for about five and a bit years while I gathered my thoughts and gathered enough money to build a new motor. So I have built a new motor now. The new motor is a monster. It's actually dropped from a 383 to a 364 cubic inch, but it's a Dart LS Next steel racing block, Malna crank, basically the best of the best. I wanted this motor to be bulletproof, and the motor is in, and I did my first quick start of it last night. Ran it about 10 seconds, shut it off so I can do all my checks, and this morning I fixed a few little things. I fired it up and put it through one heat cycle, and I'm going to be taking another video shortly, which I'll edit onto this, of the car running. So Judas will be back on the streets again pretty soon. The target has always been 1,000 wheel horsepower and 1,000 foot-pounds of torque on 93 pump gas, and then obviously we'll ramp it up from there on race gas, ethanol, and that's about the history. The reason the car is called Judas is the most interesting thing, I think. So when I was a heavy-duty Audi forum guy, 10 years ago, and when people found out what I was doing to this really rare Audi RS6, putting a GM piece of crap engine in it, I got flamed so hard on the internet. You're an idiot. Why would you put that piece of shit pushrod engine in such a great car? The Audi engine is far superior. You can make way more power with the Audi engine. on and on and on, and the arguments continued for a long time. So that's why I called the car Judas, because I betrayed the history of this car, and I love it. So that's it. Long ramble, part of an introduction. I'll get some. I'll do a walk around video of the car later and show you some of the details, and then I'll fire it up and let you hear the glory. All right.